So GPT-5 came out, and I have thoughts. Like so many on the internet, of course, the internet is all abuzz, and it's a lot of bad, I would say, overall. I plan to come in and talk about the absolute madness of them discontinuing earlier generations of their models, which they've done if you use the user interface, right, which most of us do. That's how we're actually communicating with it, right? We're opening up ChatGPT and we're going and we're talking with it. Maybe you've never experimented with switching your models like you used to be able to do a week ago, and you could go and you could choose 3.5. Maybe you don't have a pro plan, and so you're using one of the older models that are free, or maybe you're switching over to one of the reasoning models, O1, O3, something like that. Maybe you really like 4 for Omni, 4.5, and as of this new GPT-5 release, they've eliminated the ability to toggle between them. And that's bad enough as it is. I have my issues with that as well, and I'll continue to gripe. But I will pat them on the back at least that issue where they removed access to the older models apparently did not apply to API calls. API calls are a way for developers like us to create products built on top of OpenAI's systems. So a lot of us have built products that talk to older versions of the models. And when I was reading about this issue of like, why can't I find 4 Omni anymore, finding out that they've deprecated it, they've basically removed access to it, I started to panic thinking that, man, tools that I've built using that model, does that mean they're not going to work anymore? Thankfully, OpenAI seems not to have made the blunder quite that big, and the systems that I've built that use the older models are still functioning. So kudos to them, but it is a little bit of a warning that when you're building products on top of these foundation models that are put out by these companies, you have no control, and there's a decent chance they'll just pull the rug out from under you. And it's exceptionally unusual to have an organization do something like that without telling you. But they didn't tell anybody when they were releasing GPT-5 that they were going to be removing your ability to toggle between the models. And so, I think it's understandable that developers might have panicked thinking that they were losing access via API too. So that's a little into the weeds. That's kind of developer speak. But I will say I still have my grievances with the release. And I also feel somewhat vindicated. I've been saying for a while that we're reaching a ceiling with these foundation models, and there's a point at which we're really not going to get that much gain and benefit from a newer generation relative to the amount of money and energy and water and different kinds of things that are going into it. There's been research showing, for example, that we've kind of reached a saturation point with the big data, where throwing more data at a model isn't actually making it perform better. And I think this release is suffering from some of those ceilings that we're hitting. So whether or not the model is even actually that different remains to be seen. There apparently are tone differences, and there are people that have gotten really accustomed to the conversational tone or maybe the casual nature of certain models. They would actually flip between different versions of model because they liked the output that they were getting. And now it's maybe drier or more curt or shorter or different kinds of things. So that indicates that the model itself, the really heavy lifting large language model, is actually different in some way. But in a lot of ways, it really feels like what they've done is package it differently and given it a new version number. And what this means is, whereas you used to have the ability to choose which model you wanted to use, and that's kind of a power user feature, right? Most users probably don't know which model is going to work best or don't care and just want it to work when they hit enter. But for those of us that sort of want a really quick response for brainstorming purposes might choose one model, and others where we really needed to reason through and figure out something or do math or something really complicated, we might have switched over to a reasoning model. GPT-5, ChatGPT-5, is now making those kinds of decisions for you. Basically what it's done is add a decision layer where, based on what you submit to it, it decides what model is going to work best and then sends it over there. For those that weren't really paying attention to that sort of thing before, that might be a really useful feature. For those of us that are pretty particular about which model we want to use, it's a downside. And we do get the option in some cases to tell it, hey, want a faster response? Click here, and it'll bypass the reasoning model. But I can tell you personally, I'm not a big fan of the reasoning models in any platform, OpenAI or otherwise. I don't find the benefit really there for me in terms of how much longer I have to wait for a response, or being sort of an environmentally oriented sort of person. The fact that it's like 10 times more energy that's being consumed for the same thing. So I like the ability to choose which model I use, and I was a big fan of 4.5, and I was a fan of 4 Omni before that. So I'm a little disgruntled like so many. But again, I will give them kudos at least for leaving developers access to the older models for at least a little while. But it is a caveat that if you're building systems that depend on these things, you better have a backup plan. And as we've learned today, apparently OpenAI isn't going to tell you ahead of time.